Hi everybody! I hope you're all having a good day. I hope you're all smiling and enjoying your lovely day. So in this following tutorial, I'm going to be showing you guys on how to automatically rig your hair inside of PMX Editor. For this demonstration, we are going to be using a ponytail, a simple ponytail. I will still explain on how to do it for long hair with multiple hair strands, but I'm focusing solely on the ponytail because the demonstration is much more easier to follow and it's a more clear visual in comparison with long hair, which you'll see very soon of what I mean. But pretty much before I do actually continue on with this demonstration, I need to remind you guys, before you get started on this tutorial, you need to have knowledge on weight painting, and you also need to understand how to rig basic 3D models. If you have no rigging knowledge, or if you're brand new to 3D or PMX Editor or new to 3D in general, you should not be in this tutorial, and in fact you should actually be googling how to weight paint, how to rig a model, whether in Blender or in PMX Editor. Just get the knowledge, and then once you get the knowledge and you actually understand it, then you can come back and follow along with this tutorial. But either way, I'm going to try to make the demonstration spoon-fed as much as I can, but once again, it really depends on your model, and I highly recommend also, please apply your knowledge to this tutorial, because I cannot, because there's so many hair strands in the world that does exist, different types of physics, so please apply this knowledge of the video to your work. It's not going to be a perfect match. If by any chance you have issues applying your knowledge, feel free to DM me. I should have my socials pop up early right here, video edited, but if you have issues applying your knowledge by any chance, go ahead, DM me. We'll talk about it on either Discord, Twitter, or if you prefer email, there's email, but I usually prefer Discord. But with that being said, though, let's go ahead with the demonstration. First things first, what we will be needing to do is we need to delete the existing rig. If your model does not have the hair rigged at all, I guess that's good news, but either way, I'm going to be still showing you how to delete an existing rig, and I'm going to show you how to kind of fix it up before we do the automatic rigging stuff. And I'm also going to show you quickly on how to separate the hair, especially for hair like this that uses Bezier curves. So Bezier curves is kind of like having that separate hair strand look. This is actually, if you have a Vroid model and you made your hair in Vroid, they count as Bezier curves. So I'll still show you how that works, which I'll show you right now. So go ahead, select the M button up here. And what you're going to do in the refine masking window, press the R button right here. And what you're going to do is you're going to find the material that corresponds with your hair. If by any chance your model is in a single piece, like there's only one material, you'll have to split, and I'll show you how that works. If by any chance your hair is already in multiple pieces, you're very good. But for this case, the hair is actually connected. So I will have to show you, I'll show you very easily. All you have to do to separate, for this case, our ponytail or whatever hair strand, go ahead and select it like this, and then press on Ctrl X, and it should select the linked vertices according to the hair. Now keep in mind to select as much parts as possible on the hair, because sometimes with PMX Editor they cause doubles. Doubles is basically when there's like, these little orange spots, vertices. There could be time where you can move a vertice and there'll still be a vertice kind of underneath it, which causes some overlap. It causes a lot of issues, honestly. Don't ever have those doubles. Basically a vertice on top of a vertice and they're not merged properly. So that tends to happen a lot with PMX Editor, which is kind of sad, but but for our case, at least for my model, the ponytail was able to separate properly. So I'm going to go ahead and right click right now and then split it, and I can go ahead, and before actually I do split it, I also have to remember that for my model I do have the hair highlights separate like this, so I'll have to make sure I do a separate separation for that. So let me go ahead and separate the ponytail. So if you have something like if you do have modeled hair strand, if you do have modeled hair highlights, excuse me, if you have modeled hair lights like this, which I don't really recommend doing, this is just an old method, but in case you actually do have this, please make sure you also split those as well. For my case it was all together, so I have to go ahead and split it. If you have any other hair accessories, like if you have multiple bows on the hair or something like that, make sure also separate them, so that way when you kind of have them one-on-one. Basically have that entire piece right there, pretty much. I hope that was clear. I hope. But anyways, so now that we have the hair, at least the ponytail separated, what we're gonna then do now, and also by the way, you can go to the material tab. If by any chance you do struggle with Japanese names, because my model has the Japanese materials names, if you do struggle with figuring out where your Japanese materials names are and what they are and stuff, just go ahead and select the material here and select the EN button here, and you can see the English name, but all models are not translated because PMX Editor does not have an automatic translator, so this is more manually translated. You'll have to, if you don't have an English translation for your model, or if it's improper, which tends to happen a lot with a lot of MMD models, you'll have to copy and paste the name here. There's also times where the model may have the most weirdest names, or they just were lazily named, or they're just duplicates of a name, like new, which I just have here, like new, they'll have something like this. You'll just have to kind of just click around and just see what part's which and kind of memorize it, or just rename it so it would make sense. But pretty much, we are going to now delete the existing rig on the model, at least for the, hair only. So I'm gonna go ahead and select my ponytail bone, and I'm gonna go ahead and delete it. Once you have that, then you gotta delete the rigidifies. If the rigidifies are too hard to select by any chance, go to the, this also applies to the bones, go to your PMX Editor window, scroll down, and find the parts that correspond with the hair, the existing rigidifies, bones, or joints. So go ahead and delete that. And then joints, once again, I'm gonna go here, find the name. If by any chance, like I said, you're gonna have to hunt it down. You can select around, or you can select a 3D view if you need to figure out. There's also times where you may have some random joints like all over the place. You might want to clean up your model while you're at it. But do be careful with joints, because if you delete the joints incorrectly, it can actually cause your model to crash in MMD. So heads up there. But yeah, once we have that, delete the joints. Simple. Now that we have this basically removed, now we have to go and make it where the ponytail is rigged to the head 100%. So let's go ahead, select the head bone here, click on start. You can press the W button up here to open the weight paint window here, and click on start, and then you should have 100% by default. And what you're going to then do is you're going to weight paint the entire hair. Make sure any other extra stuff that are on the hair, like highlights if they're modeled, or bows and stuff, or whatever stuff that is linked to the hair, make sure you also weight paint it too. This also applies with long hair as well. You'll have to do the same exact thing. But after this, it's gonna start getting a bit different, and I do have a demo model which does explain exactly how you will be rigging the long hair. But pretty much you should have this already rigged up, and once you do, make sure to get every spot. But once you do, click on start, go to transform view, press the T button. You're going to test the model. So you're going to select this groove bone or mother bone or whatever. You're going to move it around, or controller bone, move it around and test for any stretching issues. As you can see, there's no stretching issues, so we are good to go. Also going to double check, select your head bone, and make sure to test the hair here to make sure it's all good and connected to the right bone. And since that is good, we're good. Now the next thing we have to do is make sure that there's a rigid body on our model. For our case, I already have a rigid body. I have 2 of them for my model. If your model does not have one, which by any chance, if your model was converted from Void to PMX Editor, you should already have a rigid body. It's really tiny though, but you should have one. If your model was from scratch and you do not have the proper colliders made inside with VRM spring bones, and you were converted to PMX Editor with the program or something like that, or an add-on, you may not have one. But really, if you basically just check your model, see if you have or don't have one, and what you'll have to do is select your bone here, select edit, go to bone, click on create rigid body bone tracking. That will create your rigid body. That's really all you have to do. Once you have your rigid body already there, what you're going to then do is we're going to actually begin with the auto rigging. But before I get started with that, I need to heavily explain something. This is regarding the difference between ponytail versus long hair. And I need you guys to follow along with me because this is the part that gets more trickier, especially for beginners, because the way the hair rigging kind of works is might confuse, yeah, it'll definitely like confuse some people, but I'll try to explain. So basically for a ponytail we'll have just, you know, one single bone chain, right? A single bone chain. But there are times where new people may end up rigging, let's say long hair, they'll rig the entire long hair as one single bone chain. That's not how you're supposed to rig the hair, and I'll show you how do you properly arrange the long hair. So here I have an old model that I made a long time ago. It's a mess, I am aware, but this does show, this is at least like a good enough sample that I can get, which demonstrates how the hair rigging is kind of supposed to be in terms of separated strands. Because you can't just simply, you know, select this entire hair here. You can't just select, trying to pull up the verse. You can't just select this and then have it where the bone chain will kind of move it like this, basically, if that makes sense. That's not gonna look really well. This is just to give you an idea because I don't have a hair sample that's like a bad sample right now, but really just to give you an idea, if you only rig this hair as one single bone chain, it's gonna look bad. So for some hair like this though, or something related, because there are many different types of hairstyles, different modeling techniques and all that, so you will have to apply your knowledge heavily on this part. But for this case though, for a hair like this, you'll have to separate them in strands. Meaning, when it comes to the skirt add-on and you're trying to rig it, you're going to have to reopen that add-on multiple times depending on how long the hair is, how many strands there are, and other stuff. So many factors with the hair. This is where I stress really heavily because this is where you heavily apply your knowledge. I can't really baby you on this part because hair has different varieties. So like I said, if you have issues applying your knowledge, feel free to DM me, and I'll try to help you out with your hair situation. But for something like this though, also, if by any chance you do struggle to select these strands, you can still use the same method, just select the tiny parts here and then Control X. Let me go ahead, select here, Control X, and you should be able to separate the strands very easily, like this. Like I said, it may depend on the model. Some models may end up being very broken on the hair, so once again, be very careful on this. Also, if you have too many strands as well, for like something like this, please don't rig each strand individually like this, because a lot of times, like if you have a potato computer, like your computer runs very slowly, that's a very bad idea. You're going to have optimization issues, you're going to lag a lot, it's going to not be good. So I recommend for something like this, either rig, so basically you'll have to select 2 hair strands at once, and this is not a bad thing, it's actually a good thing. You can select 2 hair strands at once and you can rig that into a single bone chain. Or you could do 3. It depends on how many you want, can you manage the physics, all that stuff. There's a lot of factors to this. But this is my advice though. Remember, long hair, something like this, basically. Not like the amount of bones here, dear God, but basically the separated strands. But just want to heavily stress that out. But with that being said though, let's go ahead and continue with this hair here. So what we're going to then do to begin automatically rigging our hair or your hair strand, we'll have to go to Edit, Plugin, User, Skirt Plugin, Automatic Curved Surface Plugin, which is the long name for a skirt plugin. And then what you're going to do is you're going to select PMX Model. Then what you're going to do is make sure that your hair strand is separated. So I'm going to make sure I hide this part and hide this. I'm going to go ahead, for my case, I'm going to only select, not the entire hair. I'm only going to select like a big majority of it, but not too much of it, pretty much. So, like about here-ish, we'll say. So we have that hair selection. What we're gonna then do is we are going to get model, give it time to load our information. What we're gonna then do is set the circle to 1. That way it'll make one single bone chain for us. Then what we're going to do is we're going to set the height to whatever number. For my case, I'm probably going to go for a number, let's say 8 for this case, but it may depend on your model. You may want to go for 15 or 2, depending on how long, how short the hair is. Then for bone, we're going to select the head bone. The head bone symbol should look like this. And then I'm going to go ahead and select the head rigibite for my model as well. Whatever name it is, as long as it's the head rigibite and head bone. If you do not set it properly, it's going to look weird. And it's probably going to give you some issues. What we're going to then do here, we can name it however we want. We can name it hair. I'm just going to copy and paste it here so we know that's the hair. So we don't confuse it for skirt, because that previous translation here, this means skirt or dress, just skirt. Simple as that. And then I'm also going to name this part horizontal, but we really don't need to name it though, because once we rig it, there's no horizontal joints that'll be made anyways. But either way, so we got the advance. You don't have to do anything here. Bone, make sure to set up your display frame, which mine's right here. But in case you don't know what display frame is, this is where you have to register your bones. If you do not register the bones in the display frame, either A, you're not going to be able to register the keyframe for that bone, or basically you'll just have some issues with certain animations. But mainly, primarily, also as well, if you have too many frame slots here, like 100, 200, if you have a very broken model or Frankenstein model, that can cause a lot of lag issues too. So you better clean that mess up. So make sure it's like about, I would say at best, if you want to stay optimized, a max of 10, but if you need more separation, that's fine, but don't go over, I would say don't go over 30. That is the biggest max I can go for. Don't go more than 30, otherwise that gets too much. But once we have our display frame here, then for body. For my case, I'm going to set it to collision 9. For my case, it may depend for yours. Let's say if you're a simple void model conversion, you may want to set the rigibite to probably a 4 or a 5. Really depends on your rigibite setup. I already have a lot set up on my rigibite because I make sure everything's all organized basically. So for my case, group 9 is where I put my hair at. If your hair is at group 3 or something like that, you put it in that group. Depends. For my case though, I will set up my non-collision groups. Non-collision is basically anything that's checked, they will go through, and anything that's unchecked, they will not go through. Which this is very good to have, especially like let's say for group 9, please make sure you keep 9 here checked. If you're group 3, you have to make sure that group 3 is checked. If you don't, you're gonna have weird hair issues because your hair will be colliding into itself. It'll cause issues. It ain't gonna be good. So please make sure to set it up properly. So remember that it really depends on your rigibite setup because yours differ from mine. But once again, apply your knowledge for this case. For the shape, I'll put into sphere because usually sphere gives a more flowy look, especially with how it's managed. Then what I'm going to do is set up the body type to physical bone alignment. That way the hair won't be overly stretching, it'll be constrained, and it'll be moving properly. If you set up to physics here, it'll be stretching a lot, which may look weird. Usually I set up this one if I'm going for like stretchy cloths and stuff, but for hair, not really, unless you will have stretchy hair or something you set up there. But for my case, I'm setting it up to this one. For the move, I'm going to set up to 0.555 and another 5, so 4 5s, and then rotation damping 0.999999. But once again, you may want to play with these settings basically. Okay, so once you have your settings set up, and I'll make sure again, once you have all this set up here, pretty much for the vertical joint and the horizontal joint, you don't have to mess with it honestly. But pretty much, we can go ahead and initialize our hair. So give it some time to process. And now we'll have to begin with our anchor start point. So click on anchor start point, and we're gonna begin with setting up where the physics or the bones will be located. So let me go ahead and hide the hair. Once again, it's gonna keep on appearing a lot. Thanks PMX Editor. What we're gonna then do, we are going to click on the J button, make sure everything's disabled. You're gonna select the J button, and you're gonna see like a ring of joints here. You're going to select this red square here, and if you don't have this gizmo here, please make sure to select the gizmo button up here called handle display or H key. You can easily toggle it, simple as that. Click and drag the red square here, and then click and drag the blue here, which is X and Z axis for our case, and it should be in just like this. This is how the we're going to set up the hair rig. So go to view, go to multi-view mode, and what you're going to then do is you are going to align the rigid bodies basically here. So let me go ahead, set that up on the side view. Depending on how short or long the hair is, you'll have to set up accordingly. So that should be good. Let's just angle to set this a little more. And yeah, that's very simple as that. I might want to make this a little longer just to make up for that tiny strand there, but that's pretty much it. And once you have that already, very simple, you can get out of multi-view mode, click on view, multi-view mode, and then you can select on anchor endpoint. Give it some time, and it should have the new hair rig. So we can check on bone, and there you go, see? There's the hair rig right there. Simple as that. And once you have that, we don't need this anymore, but if you want to keep it, like let's say you want to change up something, like maybe you want to make a certain area a little longer or something like that, you'll have to click on anchor start point again and kind of fix it up a bit. But for our case, it's already good enough. So once we have this, for my case though, I will have to, because I have the auto breathing add-on here, which I will be doing a video about the auto breathing add-on in the future, so stay tuned for that. But for my auto breathing model, which has this add-on, I'll have to make sure that all the bone for the auto breathing is set to the bottom, and I will have to set the hair deform to 2. If you're, like I said, if you are a VRM to PMX model, like you freshly converted your model to PMX or your standard TITA model or something like that, you really don't have to do this. Just a heads up. Let me go ahead and set deform to 2, and that way it should all be good. And there you go, it's all loaded. And that way, when I go to transform view, it shouldn't be stretching to the bottom. If it is, then you'll have to double check on that, but it should be good. We can go ahead and test our physics to see how they are. And as you can see, the hair's still a bit of a mess, which we are going to fix. So let me show you how to make sure that thing's fixed. So first and foremost, make sure to double check on your joints to make sure there are basically everything is zeroed out. Because if it's like 10 or something, it'll probably do that weird issue. What we're gonna then do is we're gonna go all the way down here to our hair, and we are going to make sure that we set the radius to a proper number, because I'm pretty sure, let's actually check. Yeah, this is extremely tiny, probably because it had like an issue or something, so we'll have to make sure to set that up to a proper number, like 5.5, 0.3, something like that, depending on how big the hair is. Once you have that, you're going to basically just make sure that the sphere is checked, physical bone alignments there, and also make sure you set the collision properly. So I'm going to double check my collisions. So I'm going to make sure that 1 is checked because I didn't do that. I'm going to make sure 2 is unchecked, 3 is unchecked, 4 is unchecked, 4, 5, that's fine. 6, I would keep that checked, but pretty much you have that. And once you have that ready, what we're going to then do, also make sure your friction set to 0, so that way your hair is more smoother in the movement. But once again, it depends on your physics type and what you want with it. what I'm gonna then do is I'm gonna set up my mask. I do have in the description a sample, like a template on the physics values, so you can go ahead and, you know, copy those if you want. But if you want to make your own sort of setup rule for the physics, by all means. But for my case, I'm gonna set up to 0.9, 0.7, 0.5, 0.3, 0.1, and then 0.09. Just like that. And then we're gonna double check and see if we have to fix anything else on our hair. So double check, and well, you know, as you can see, the hair stopped acting up. So now we can move the hair side by side, and there you go, there's physics. There might be some, of course I do see some issues regarding the weight paint. I would probably have to smooth up later. You can smooth it up manually or use Blender to smooth it up, since PMX Editor does kind of lack the ability, like basically with Blender does a very good job on smoothing and having better control on the weight paint. PMX Editor kind of lacks the tools on weight paint. So if you really want to have even more amazing weight paint, or, you know, more amazing weight paint, you'll probably have to use Blender for that. But for our case, this is still pretty good for what it can do. I would also probably, if I want to kind of hide that weight paint issue on the top of the hair, I can also make it where the top hair ridge right here is set to bone track. That way it pretty much hides the issue. If you wanted to keep it all in PMX Editor. But I would personally just go to Blender and fix that up. If you want, you could also manually do it in the weight paint here, but I don't recommend it. That would be kind of hard way, and you might run into some issues. But either way, though, that's if you want to perfect it even more. But overall, it is fine. It flops the way it should be and all that, you know. So it's all good. If by chance you're also curious on this part of the hair, so you see how the bottom hair bone stretches like that, that's because of the end bone. The end bones are basically a way, it's kind of like a way, like a sort of extra bone, which helps with kind of controlling like how long the end bone will be, hence the name end bone. Usually they're not really a bad thing. Typically I remove them though. I believe the Auto Breath Island does have their own end bones, but they are there for a good reason. But usually for something like hair or skirts, I actually would remove the end bone, and I would basically just manually set the offset to whatever. So like this, or let's say, probably not this one. We'll set this to 0.5. Nope, we'll have to set to negative. 3, 2, 1, pretty much. And that's what I do with my hair right there. I did the same thing with my skirts. That way I just remove it. That's a manual way of removing end bones there to kind of keep them all clean. Once again, also, they're reminding you guys, end bones are not really a bad thing. They're also used on twist bones. Try not to use too many of the end bones, but they're still good to have, so don't worry. But pretty much, there you go. Now the weird stretching is gone, so we're all good now. But yeah, pretty much that is how you would rig your ponytail or your separate strand. Once again, as a reminder for this hair specifically, you're going to have to do it per strand. So once you finish the first strand set, you're going to have to repeat it for the other one, and the other one, and the other one. 3D cannot get easy, by the way. Like, I mean, it can, but it's still going to be tricky, okay? I'm telling you. It's going to be tricky, so prepare yourself. Depending on how much you gotta rig and stuff, be prepared. And also, as well, I forgot I also mentioned this, if your hair was polygon modeled, basically, you don't have separate hair strands, but rather everything's all connected to achieve that more anime look. You're gonna struggle with this setup, and I'm gonna tell you right now, because there was a time I actually had to rig separate hair strands like this, but the hair was all connected. It wasn't like a bezier curve setup. It was literally all just overly connected. Basically, it didn't have that proper separation of the strands. I mean, you can still polygon model a hair and it'll still have that nice strands though, but a lot of times with that sort of anime hair that's all, you know, together to emulate actual anime hair, the rigging can be a pain in the behind for that, especially long hair. So please make sure, if you do have that sort of polygon model hair and you did make it yourself, you probably may have to remodel the hair. If by chance you did not model the hair and you just like took it from DeviantArt or something, you can't like the hair's all just connected and it's hard to rig it. You're gonna have to probably choose a different hair, or maybe commission someone to model you the proper hair and stuff. But probably get a new one. But either way though, once again, please heavily apply your knowledge for this. Because I taught you guys the basics of this hair, but there's a lot more. There's a lot more when it comes to rigging hair though, and it really just depends on the style and stuff. Once again, this can work for short hairs too, but once again, it just depends. So you'll have to apply your knowledge heavily. I can only explain as much as I can the hair, but depending on the hairstyle, you have to apply your knowledge. And I'm emphasizing this because some people may forget, or some people may ask, or they may not be ready to be able to rig the sort of style like this. But once again, take your time, apply your knowledge, and if you have to, you can actually go and download other models and study how their rigs work. That's another great thing too. If you struggle on understanding how hair rig works here, you can study other models, see how they do theirs. But make sure to choose a good model too, because even studying a broken model will actually mess your mind up with how you're studying it, so be careful. But take your time studying in it and learn it. With that being said though, hope this tutorial helps you. If by any chance you have any other problems or questions and stuff, feel free to comment down on this tutorial. You can also message me on any of my socials here, should be video edited here, if you have any further questions or issues. If you do comment on the YouTube comment section, I will try my very best to comment as fast as I can. If by any chance you have a very specific issue though, and it gets too complicated for me to answer, especially without image references, like I said, I prefer if you message me on Discord so you can send those image of your issues, and I will better understand what your issue is and I'll help you out as best as I can. Or we can schedule a conference call and I'll show you private tutoring style on how to do the thing you're trying to do, whether hair rig or skirt rig or something. But with that being said though, hey, sayonara everyone. I hope to see you guys next time, okay? Bye!